Welcome YouTubers to another episode in my Grammar Hero series. In today's video, I'm going to be working out 10 practice problems that will closely mirror what you'll see on the Arithmetic Reasoning Subtest of the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. In order to get the most out of this video, I recommend that 1. You either go to my website called ASVABapp.com and take this practice test, or 2. Pause the video after I read each question, attempt to work out the question on your own scratch paper, and then resume playing the video to check your solution. As a reminder, you're not allowed to use a calculator or a reference sheet on the ASVAB, so it behooves you not to use any of those resources as you take this practice test. And finally, I want to say that in the description of this video, I'm going to include links to videos where I discuss the techniques I use to solve each problem. So if at any point you get stuck on one of these problems, again, just take a look in the description of this video, and there you'll find those links to additional resources on my channel. So all those things being said, let's go ahead and get started with today's video. All right, so number 26 says, if 400 people can be seated in 8 buses, how many people can be seated in 5 buses? So one strategy you're going to make use of a lot in the arithmetic reasoning subtest is to set up a proportion. And in case you haven't seen that in a while, a proportion looks like this. You have one fraction on the left equal to another fraction on the right. And the way you fill this in is pretty simple. You take what's given and place it on the left-hand side of the equal sign. So we're told, according to this problem, 400 people can be seated in 8 buses. So let's use that to fill in this left-hand side of the equal sign. I'm going to put 400 people in the numerator over here, and 8 buses in the denominator. And now I'm going to look at what other information I'm given, and I'm going to use that information to fill in the right-hand side of the proportion. So as we can see, we're told 5. We want to know how many people can be seated in 5 buses. In math, you typically represent unknown values with x. So this is x people. And as we can see, we have 5 buses. So the way you fill in proportions accurately is like this. You keep your units the same on the left-hand and right-hand side of the equal sign. So in the denominator over here, I have buses. So over here, I'm going to put 5 buses. And since I have people in the numerator over here, I'm going to put people in the numerator over here. Again, we don't know how many people that is, so it's x people. Now, a lot of people like to write in the units so that way they know they set up their proportion correctly. But once you do that once, you really don't need to do it again. I just did it so you can see how to fill this out correctly. But now we're just going to cross multiply and solve for x. So I'm going to do 8 times x, which is 8x, equals 400 times 5. Okay. And now I'm going to work 400 times 5 out before I move on. So this is 8x equals. Now you could work this out doing multiplication off the side like this. But again, on the ASVAB, you have to work quickly and accurately, which means that wherever possible, you have to use mental math. So instead of working this out, I'm just going to realize that 4 times 5 is 20. And all I have to do is tack on these 2 extra zeros. So in other words, 400 times 5 is 2,000. Now to solve for x, we're going to divide both sides by 8. This is going to cross out over here, leaving you with just x over there. And now we can regard this, notably 2,000 over 8, as long division. So let's go ahead and do that. 2,000 divided by 8. Now the question is, how many times does 8 go into 2? It doesn't. How many times does 8 go into 20 without going over? The answer is 2. Given that 8 times 2 is 16. 20 minus 16 is 4. Now we can drop down this 0 as well as this 0. Now this math is pretty easy to do. We're asking how many times does 8 go into 4? It doesn't. How many times does 8 go into 40? That's 5 times, since we know 8 times 5 is 40, but 8 times 50 will be 400. So 8 times 50 is 400. Therefore, we know there's no remainder. In other words, 2,000 divided by 8 is 250, and that's what we're going to put over here. And one of the benefits of labeling your units and your proportion is this. If I look at x in my proportion, I can see that x refers to people, so I know this units is people. And as we can see, that answer choice is, in fact, B. Okay, when I took the ASVAB, I probably used 5 or 6 proportions to solve the problems that I saw. So make sure you know how to set up and use proportions. They're going to be very useful. All right, number 27 says, a restaurant buys 56 pounds of beef for $1.12 per pound and 24 quarts of milk at 90 cents per quart. How much money did it spend in total? So for this problem, we're just doing multiplication involving decimals and whole numbers, and then we got to combine those results. So let's go ahead and get started. The first instance of multiplication we're going to have to do is $1.12 times 56. And then the next instance we're going to have to do is going to be 0.90, which is 90 cents times 24. Once we work these two things out, we're going to have to combine them to figure out how much money the restaurant spent in total. With that said, let's focus on one thing at a time here. And in case you haven't done this in a while, let's think about how we're going to do multiplication involving a decimal and a whole number, notably 1.12 and 56. So in order to multiply numbers involving decimals, it's pretty simple. You simply make the decimal a whole number by shifting its decimal place. So in 1.12, we have to shift its decimal, which is right here, 2 times to the right to make 1.12, 112. Okay? Then we're just going to multiply that by the whole number. And once we work this out, notably 112 by 56, we're going to take those 2 decimals that we shifted here to the right and shift them back into the left. So let's go ahead and do that, and take your time as you do this. This is where a lot of people make mistakes. 6 times 2 is 12, so we'll bring down a 2 and carry a 1. 1 times 6 is 6, plus 1 is 7, and then 1 times 6 is 6. Before we start multiplication with this 5, we have to bring in a 0. 5 times 2 is 10, carry a 1. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. And then 5 times 1 is 5. Let's add these together. 2 plus 0 is 2. 7 plus 0 is 7. 6 plus 6 is 12, carry your 1. 5 plus 1 is 6. Bring back in your 2 decimals, 1, 2. So we can see that 112 times 56 is 6272. Let's go ahead and do the same thing over here. Instead of doing 0.90 times 24, we're going to take the decimal and shift it 2 times to the right to make 0.9090. Then we're just going to multiply that by 24. And once we're done doing this, we're going to shift those 2 decimals back into the left. So let's go ahead and work on this. 0 times 4 is 0. 9 times 4 is 36. Before we start multiplication with this 2, we have to bring in a 0 placeholder. 2 times 0 is 0. 9 times 2 is 18. Let's go ahead and add these two together. 0 plus 0 is 0. 6 plus 0 is 6. 3 plus 8, 8, 9, 10, 11. Carry a 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Shift our two decimals back in. And we can see that 0.90 times 24 is 2160. Now it should be obvious that in order to answer this question, all we do is have to add 6272 and 2160 together. So let's go ahead and do that. We have 6272 plus 2160. And again, adding decimals is pretty straightforward. You just line up your decimals accordingly. In fact, you can go ahead and drop your decimal down in place if you want to. 2 plus 0 is 2. 7 plus 6 is 13. Carry a 1. 2 plus 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. And 6 plus 2 is 8. So we can see that this restaurant spent $62.72 on 56 pounds of beef and $21.60 on 24 quarts of milk. In total, they spent $84.32 on both of those, which is answer choice D. Okay, so that was that one. All right, number 28 says, in order to join the military, your friend has to lose some weight. If your friend's body weight went from 200 pounds to 185 pounds in 1 month, what percent of his original body weight did he lose? So to answer this question, we're going to make use of a very simple formula to figure out what percent change was. And I write the formula like this. Percent change equals new minus old over old. Okay? And then sometimes you multiply it by 100 to convert it to percent like this. Now, this says you take the new value that you're given. In this case, his new weight is 185 pounds. So that's our new weight. His old weight or original weight was 200 pounds. And all we do is have to plug those things into this formula and solve accordingly. Okay, it's that simple. Now, if this percent change is positive, that means there's been an increase. Whereas if this percent change, when we work this side of the equation out, is negative, that means there's been a decrease. Since we're talking about body weight loss, I'm anticipating this percent change to be negative. Okay? So let's go ahead and, as I said, just plug these values into this equation. We have new 185 over minus 200 over 200 times 100. Let's go ahead and work this out step by step, since many of you probably haven't worked with fractions in a while. 185 minus 200 is negative 15. Okay, that's over 200 times 100. Let's keep working this out. The next thing I want to do is to get rid of this 100. And you might be able to see this, but basically this is the same as, and let me write it off to the side. This is the same as negative 15 times 100 over 200. What I can do is I can disregard this negative 15 for a second, and then 100 over 200, I can just cross out these zeros, and this becomes 1/2. And that's what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to cross out that 0, that 0, that 0, that 0. Anything times 1 is itself. So we can actually disregard this 1 in the numerator. So this becomes percent change equals negative 15 over 2. Okay, percent change equals 15 divided by 2 is fairly easy to work out in your head. Again, 14 divided by 2 is 7. 16 divided by 2 is 8. Therefore, 15 divided by 2 is going to be 7.5, and it's negative. So negative 7.5. Of course, this is in percentage. And what this says, since it's negative, is that there was a decrease in weight, which we can see right here, 200 to 185 pounds. So we know the percent change in this case is 7.5%. We can disregard this negative, since this negative just says there was a decrease, which we can see. Okay? So that was that one. Let's go ahead and move on to number 29. Number 29 says the temperature in Monkey's Eyebrow, Kentucky over the course of a week was 35 degrees, 36 degrees, 34 degrees, 38 degrees, 40 degrees, 39 degrees, and 44 degrees. What was the average daily temperature in Monkey's Eyebrow for the week? Okay, so to solve this one, we're going to have to find the average daily temperature. In order to find the average, I usually use this formula. Average equals the sum of the numbers divided by how many numbers there are. So this is what that looks like. We have average. Let's go ahead and sum these all up. That's 35 plus 36 plus 34 plus 38 plus 40 plus 39 plus 44. So this is the sum of all the numbers that were given. And we're going to divide that by how many numbers there are to find the average. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers. Okay. This is where the tedious part starts, because now we have to find the sum of all these numbers. Rather than doing that horizontally, I'm actually going to write this vertically so as not to make any mistakes. So again, we have 35, 36, 34, 38, 40, 39, 44. So let's go ahead and add all these up. I'm going to do this step by step by combining two terms at once. 5 plus 6 is 11. 4 plus 8, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then 9 plus 4 is 13. So this is 10 plus 10 plus 10, 30. 1 plus 2 is 3. Plus 3 is 6. So this is 36. So we're going to drop down a 6 and carry a 3. And this one's fairly easy to do. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 15, 16, 17, 18. So we have 18 threes, and 4 plus 4 is 8. 18 plus 8, well, 8 plus 8 is 6, carry a 1, 26. So this is 266. All right, so this becomes 266 over 7. And as we've already seen in this video, we can treat fractions as if they were long division. So instead of reading this as 266 over 7, I'm going to read it as 266 divided by 7. I'm going to go ahead and work this out very quickly. 7 doesn't go into 2. 7 goes into 26 3 times without going over. 7 times 3 is 21. 26 minus 21 is 5. And now we're going to bring down this 6. 7 goes into 56. Well, 7 times 7 is 49. 7 times 9 is 63. 7 times 8 is 56. So we can see that the average is 38 degrees centigrade. Okay, so the answer to this one is A. Again, you will see problems on the ASVAB where you have to write out a bunch of numbers like this and then do the math vertically so you don't make any mistakes as you're trying to find the average. So be prepared to do that. But apart from that, these problems are pretty straightforward. I think when I took the test, I had to do one of these problems twice because I made a mistake somewhere in my arithmetic over here. So just be prepared to do that. All right, number 30 says, on his day off, James Dorr decided to take a trip to the zoo if he drove at an average speed of 65 miles per hour and it took him 3 hours to get from his house to the zoo, how far away is the zoo from his house? So in order to solve this one, we're going to make use of the distance formula, which is distance equals rate times time. And in this case, we should realize that we have two of these elements. We have rate, notably 65 miles per hour, and we have time, notably 3 hours. The way the distance formula in short is this: if you're given two parts of the distance formula, you can solve for the third part. So if you're given R and T, you can find D. If you're given D and R, you can find T. And if you're given D and T, you can find R. In this case, we have R and T, so let's just go ahead and plug those things in. We have a rate of 65 and a time of 3 hours. So this is 65 times 3, which I'm going to do off to the side so I don't make any mental mistakes here. 5 times 3 is 15, carry a 1. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 1 is 19. And this is 195 miles. So to answer this question, Mr. James Dorr must live 195 miles from the zoo. Okay? So that's this one. All right, number 31 says normal body temperature is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. When your body loses heat faster than it can produce it, it becomes hypothermic. This occurs when body temperature falls below 95 degrees Fahrenheit. At what point does hypothermia occur in terms of Celsius? Use Celsius equals 5/9 times Fahrenheit minus 32. Okay, so this part about normal body temperature is superfluous information. That is, it's information that's not needed to solve this problem. So we're going to go ahead and cross that out. I just put it in there to try to trick people, and the ASVAB will do that too. What we're most interested in is figuring out the point at which someone becomes hypothermic, and we're told that happens when body temperature falls below 95 degrees. So we're going to take this and plug it in place of F in this formula. Again, we're given the formula Celsius equals 5/9 times F minus 32. F refers to Fahrenheit, and we know that's already 95 degrees. So let's go ahead and work this out. This is 5/9 times 95 minus 32. Let's go ahead and work this off to the side. We have 95 minus 32. 5 minus 2 is 3. 9 minus 3 is 6. Okay, so let's go ahead and keep working this out. This is 5/9 times 95 minus 32, which is 63. And as we as I just mentioned previously, we can go ahead and reduce this by doing this. We can write this as 63/1. So this becomes 5/9 times 63/1. That is, we're multiplying two fractions, notably 5/9 times 63/1. But as you can see, 5 times 63 is a lot of work. But I know 9 and 63 are 63 is divisible by 9. As I previously mentioned in the last problem, 63 divided by 9 is in fact 7. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say 9 goes into 9 one time, 9 goes into 63 7 times. So now this new problem becomes this: 5/1 times 7/1. And anything divided by 1 is itself, so we can disregard these ones. This becomes 5 times 7. 5 times 7 is 35. So we can see that 95 degrees Fahrenheit is the same as 35 degrees centigrade, which is A, and that's the point at which the body becomes hypothermic in terms of Celsius or centigrade. Okay, number 32 says, in order to graduate from college summa cum laude, which is Latin for highest honors, you must earn a 90% in your final statistics class. On your first 3 tests, you scored a 90%, an 89%, and a 95%. What do you need to score on your 4th test to earn a 90% in the class and graduate with highest honors? Okay, so this is another variation of an average or mean problem. But that said, this one's slightly more challenging, but you will see an example of this on the ASVAB if you're doing okay. So let's go ahead and think about how we're going to do this. Again, to find the average, we took the sum of all the numbers and divide it by how many numbers there were. So let's go ahead and write that number down, or that formula down again. Average equals the sum of the numbers divided by how many numbers there are. Let's take a look and see what we're given in this case. We're given the fact that you need a 90% average in the class to graduate with highest honors. So this tells you what your average has to be. So in place of average, I'm going to put 90. Again, the problem tells you you need a 90% average to graduate with highest honors, so our average must be 90. Let's find the numbers we're going to sum. We have 90% right there, so we have 90 plus 89 plus 95. But that said, we're told that there are 4 tests. We only know 3 of them. We're going to represent this unknown 4 test score with an x, so this is going to be plus x. And then we divide this by how many numbers there are. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers. Okay, so just like that, we set up our equation that we can now solve. And again, previously, we were given all these numbers to sum. In this case, we were given 3 of them, an unknown one, and the average. Okay, so just if you want to scroll back and watch that part of this video, that might be helpful. But that said, I'm going to start this problem by getting rid of this 4 in the denominator here. And to do that, I'm going to multiply, as I just did, both sides by 4. This is going to cross out here. 4 times 9 would be 36. Therefore, 4 times 90 is 360. And of course, this equals 90 plus 89 plus 95 plus x. Now to solve for x, all we do is have to move 90, 89, and 95 to this other side of the equation. Prior to doing that, I'm going to go ahead and combine all these values so that I just have one value instead of 3. So let's go ahead and do that vertically so we don't make any mistakes. Okay, we have 90 plus 89 plus 95. All right, let's work this out. 0 plus 9 is 9. 9 plus 5 is 14. Carrier 1. 9 plus 8 is 17. Plus 10 is 27. So this becomes 360 equals the sum of 90, 89, and 95, which is 274 plus x. Now we're just going to move one value, notably 274, to this left-hand side, and we're going to do that by subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 274 from both sides. This will cross out with over here, and that's just going to leave me x equals 360 minus 274. Let's go ahead and do that off to the side if we can't do it in our head. 4 minus 0 we can't do, so we're going to have to borrow. I'm going to borrow from this 6, so this is going to become 5, and this is going to become 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. And if we take a look, we can see that only one of our answer choices ends in 6. So I'm going to say that's the correct answer choice. Now we're doing 5 minus 7, which we can't do. We have to borrow one more time. This becomes 2. This becomes 15. 15 minus 7 is 8. 2 minus 2 is 0. So we can see 8x equals 86. And this x refers to the grade you have to receive on your 4th test in order to have a 90 average in the class in order to graduate summa cum laude. So the answer to this one is 86%. Okay, so that's that one. All right, so number 33 says, your neighbor's new rectangular swimming pool is 30 feet long, 12 feet wide, and 8 feet deep. Your neighbor decides to only fill his pool up to 7 feet with water. What is the volume of water? What volume of water would be in his pool? So we're dealing with a rectangular prism, and to find the volume of that, you simply do length times width times height. If you look on the community tab of my channel, you'll see that I recently posted a formula sheet, and this is one of the formulas that it behooves you to know. Again, volume of a rectangular square or rectangular prism is length times width times height. Okay, in this case, we know our length is 30, so that's our L. Our width is 12, and we know our height should be 8, but since your neighbor's only filling up his pool with 7 feet of water, we know the height is actually going to be 7. So this is volume equals 30 times 12 times 7. This is quite a bit of work to do, as you'll think when you take the arithmetic reasoning of the subtest. Let's go ahead and work this out step by step. First thing I'm going to do is 30 times 12. So I'm going to do that off to the side. 2 times 0 is 0. 3 times 2 is 6. Before you start multiplication with this 1, bring in a 0. 1 times 0 is 0. 3 times 1 is 3. Let's add this together. 60 plus 300 is 360. So this is 360 times 7. Let's go ahead and work this out now. We have 360 times 7. 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 6 is 42. Carry your 4. 7 times 3 is 21. 22, 23, 24, 25. So we can see the volume is 25, 20 feet cubed. Again, area is always squared, volume is always cubed, so we can see this is 25, 20 feet cubed. Okay, so that's that one. All right, number 34 says, during the holidays, an item originally priced at $55 is marked 25% off. What is its sale price? So first we have to find out what 25% of 55 is, and then we have to subtract that from 55. So let's go ahead and work on doing that. Again, we want to find what 25% of 55 is. So I'm going to take 55 and multiply it by 0.25. This 0.25 is the decimal form of 25%. And as you can see, we're now doing multiplication involving a whole number, notably 55, and a decimal, notably 0.25. As we've seen in this video already, we want to shift the decimal and 0.25 2 times to the right to make 0.25 25. So that looks like this. 55 times 25, albeit with 2 decimals to shift back into the left when we're done at the end. So let's go ahead and work this out. We have 5 times 5, which is 25. Carry a 2. 5 times 5 is 25, 26, 27. Before we start multiplication with this 2, we want to bring down a 0 placeholder. 5 times 2 is 10. Carry a 1. 5 times 2 is 10 plus 1 is 11. Let's go ahead and add these two numbers together. 5 plus 0 is 5. 7 plus 0 is 7. 1 plus 2 is 3. And 1 plus nothing is just 1. Bring in our two decimals to the left. 1, 2. So in other words, 25% of 55 is 1375. So now we're going to take this 1375 and subtract it from $55, which will tell us what the sale price was. So we're going to do 55. I'm going to add a decimal and 2 zeros to make this easier. I'm going to subtract it by 1375. Okay, so now we're just doing subtraction involving decimals. If you want, you can go ahead and drop down your decimal in place. It's not going to move, unlike in multiplication and division. But now we're doing 0 minus 5, which we can't do, so we're going to have to borrow. We have a 0 here, so there's nothing to borrow from. So we're going to borrow from this 5. This is going to become 4. This is going to become 10. We're going to borrow one more time. This is going to become 9. This is going to become 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 7 is 2. 4 minus 3 is 1. And 5 minus 1 is 4. So we can see that 55 minus 1375 is 41.25, which is the sale price. Okay, so that was that one. All right, number 35 says, you are running a concession stand at a basketball game. You are selling hot dogs and sodas. Each hot dog cost $1.50 and each soda cost 50 cents. At the end of the night, you made a total of $78.50 and you sold a total of 87 hot dogs and sodas combined. How many hot dogs were sold and how many sodas were sold? Okay, so whenever you're asked to solve for two different variables, notably hot dogs and sodas in this case, that should prompt you to realize that you have to use a system of equations to answer the question. And it takes a little bit of practice going from a word problem like this to a set of equations that you can then solve. So let me go ahead and try to make it a little bit easier. I'm going to call hot dogs X and soda Y. Let's start right here. Each hot dog cost $1.50 and each soda cost 50 cents. So that, in terms of an algebraic equation, looks like this. 1.5x plus 0.5y. And we know that for the night, we made a total of $78.50. So 1.5x plus 0.5y equals $78.50. Okay. By that same token, we know that we sold a total of 87 hot dogs and sodas combined. So that's x plus y equals 87. So this is the cost of each hot dog and soda, and that totaled $78.50. This is the number of hot dogs and sodas, and we know that totaled 87. By solving for x and y, we'll be able to answer this question. And there are two ways to go about solving systems of equations. You can use the substitution or elimination method. I think using the elimination method is the easiest. And that says take one of the equations, multiply it by a constant, add it to the other equation so that you can eliminate one of the variables. So if I take this second equation and multiply it by negative 0.5, that will let me eliminate this y variable. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. Again, I'm just going to copy this straight over here. So this is 1.5x plus 0.5y equals 7850. And now I'm going to take this negative 0.5 and distribute it to this x, to this y, and finally to this 87. So let's go ahead and do that. Negative 0.5 times x is negative 0.5 x. Negative 0.5 times y is negative 0.5 y. And then negative 0.5 times 87. Well, I'm going to work that out over here. That's 87 times 0.5, or negative 0.5. Again, we're doing math involving a whole number and a decimal. So I'm going to take this decimal in 0.5 and shift it one time to the right. So this becomes 87 times negative 5, albeit with one decimal to shift back into the left at the end when we're done. 7 times 5 is 35. Carrier 3. 8 times 5 is 40. Plus 3 is 43. We know this is negative. A positive times a negative is a negative. Shift our one decimal back in. So we know that this is negative 43.5. And we can add a 0 on the end of that as a placeholder. Now we're going to add these two equations. This becomes negative 1.5x plus negative 0.5x. So this just becomes 1x. And in math, it's customary not to write 1 in front of variables. So this is just x. All right, let me go ahead and do the y's. Positive 0.5y minus 0.5y. This is the elimination process right here. 0.5y minus 0.5y is 0. This variable is eliminated, and that's why we did this multiplication over here. And now we're just going to go ahead and do this, notably 7850 minus 4350. 0 minus 0 is 0. 5 minus 5 is 0. Drop down your decimal in place. 8 minus 3 is 5, and 7 minus 4 is 3. So we can see x equals 35. X refers to the number of hot dogs that were sold. So we can see that 35 hot dogs were sold, and the only answer choice that includes that is B. That said, you may have to completely solve this system of equations in order to get the second answer. So what you do is you take one of the variables, now that you've solved for it, and you plug it into either of the two original equations. Again, our two original equations are 1.5x plus 0.5y equals 7850, or x plus y equals 87. X plus y equals 87 seems a little bit easier to work with than the other one, so let's go ahead and do that. X plus y equals 87. Thanks to the elimination method, we were able to solve for x. So we can take this x and plug it in right there. This is 35 plus y. And my pen is starting to act up. Equals 87. Subtract 35 from both sides to give you y by itself on this side. 87 minus 35, 7 minus 5 is 2. 8 minus 3 is 5. So we can see y is 52. Y refers to the number of sodas sold, and as we can see, that is correct in this answer as well. Okay, so that was this one. You may need to watch my video on how to work with systems of equations to set this one up. But that's how you work this one out. This is, if you start seeing questions like number 35 on the ASVAB, chances are you're going to score 70 or better on the test. Okay, so that's it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. As always, you're more than welcome to leave feedback in the comment section below. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and cut you loose. Konnichiwa.